Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story where a small-town mayor turns a national sporting event into a masterclass in malicious compliance. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Sporting committee screwed up the budget. We made them pay to cancel. I was the mayor of a municipality that was tasked with hosting a large sporting event in my small European country, but only for athletes from within our nation. People from all over would come to my town, and we were tasked with housing the athletes and constructing a sporting facility. The sporting committee gave us an estimate of around $12 million. We blindly took their word. However, after signing the contract, we realized that we underestimated it. It would actually be over $30 million. If we backed out now, then we'd have to pay a heavy fine to the sporting organization. Enter our malicious compliance plan. Hotels? No siree. We plan to have the athletes stay in home shares with local families. Sporting facility? Thanks to our municipality's influence on coding laws and building classifications, we classified the facility as a temporary community facility. This allowed us to use portable toilets instead of connecting the building to the sewer and having other cost-saving measures. Seating? Nowhere did the contract specify that the sporting arena required spectator seats, so we planned an arena without any. All these adjustments would bring the cost down to a mere $4 million. We got the plans and permits and were ready to start constructing. However, word travels fast. The sporting committee caught wind of our plans. They pleaded for a change, but their contract's legalese was lackluster. The fallout, they had to pay us $3 million to terminate the contract, and now they've heavily lawyered up their legalese to avoid any such issues in the future. Quick thinking. But quite frankly, anyone that builds a stadium that becomes useless after said event deserves whatever comes their way. At least you managed to get out of what would have been a complete disaster. And our second story. You said you had no money? Cool. It'll cost you $4,000 to cross my yard now. The house next door to mine is a rental, and for years it had been a fairly quiet neighbor. That changed earlier this year when I started having issues with two massive spruce trees growing right on the property line. These weren't your run-of-the-mill backyard trees. These were towering, decades-old giants whose roots were wreaking havoc on my foundation and underground utilities. Their branches were also hanging well over my fence, regularly dropping needles, cones, and limbs into my yard. Now, in my region, there's a very clear law regarding trees growing directly on the property line. If they're causing damage or posing a threat, both property owners are equally responsible for their removal, including splitting the cost 50-50. Sounds fair, right? I did everything by the book. I documented the damage, cracked concrete, shifting soil, backed up drains, and contacted a certified arborist. The removal quote came out to around $8,000, mostly due to the sheer size of the trees and how precariously close they were to both our houses. Removing them would require cranes, careful dismantling, and multiple crews over several days, a serious operation. I reached out to the landlord who owned the rental property. He didn't live there, hadn't even seen the trees in years. I explained the situation, showed him the documentation, and laid out the legal responsibility. His response? I have no money. Sorry, do whatever you want, but I can't help you. Frustrating, but not entirely surprising. Technically, I could have taken him to small claims or even brought in an arborist attorney, but the cost of the legal battle would likely have outweighed the amount I was trying to recover, and collecting on a judgment from someone who already claimed to be broke? Not worth it. So reluctantly, I paid the full $8,000 to have the trees removed. It solved the problem and saved my property from further damage, but the bitterness lingered, especially since the guy didn't even offer to contribute a token amount, just shrugged it off like it wasn't his issue. Fast forward a few months, and karma came knocking. The tenant, who'd lived next door for years, passed away, and the landlord decided to sell the house. Given the tight housing market, he probably thought it'd be a quick, profitable transaction, but fate had other plans. During the pre-sale inspection, the buyer's insurance company flagged several trees on the rental property as hazardous. Not just unsightly, uninsurable hazards that needed to be removed before the sale could go through. The catch? The only way to access those trees with the necessary equipment was through one of two routes, either through my property or by demolishing the detached garage of the neighbor on the other side. The latter wasn't an option unless he wanted to foot the bill for a full teardown and rebuild. So guess who came knocking at my door? Yep, the same landlord who swore up and down he had no money when I asked him to share the cost of tree removal. He asked, very politely now, if I'd be willing to let his arborist and equipment access my backyard so they could reach the problem trees. It's just a few hours of access, he said. Shouldn't be a big deal. I smiled. Sure, I said, I'll grant written permission for $4,000. He blinked. What? I repeated it. $4,000, same amount you owed me for the last set of trees I had to remove all by myself. You said you had no money then. I'm assuming the sale of this house will give you plenty of liquidity now. He tried to guilt trip me, said it would delay the sale, that it could fall through. I stayed firm. That's not my concern. You're asking to use my land. That has a cost. You skipped your responsibility the first time and I covered it. You want access now? Pay me back. He huffed, tried to negotiate, but I wouldn't budge. Take it or leave it, I said, but you're not crossing my property unless there's a check in my hand. The following week he returned, check in hand, $4,000 made out to me. I handed him a signed letter granting temporary access to my property for equipment use between specific hours and dates. I even included a clause that any damages would be his responsibility. A little petty maybe, but legally ironclad. The tree crew came and went, the sale went through, and I got back every penny I'd... And our next story. Karen thought I worked at the store because I spoke French. Then my neighbor went nuclear. I live in a small town that's 95% English speaking. There are a few French families due to the local industry. I speak enough French, about as well as an 8-year-old native speaker, that I made friends with a neighbor who doesn't speak English and can't drive because of seizures. Her husband has been out of town for work for the last few months, so I've taken her grocery shopping and to run errands. Her computer died last week, so I took her to the big box computer store to look at her new one. I work in electronics as a technician, so I know a thing or two about brands, quality pricing, and what computer to get based on her needs. I'm standing at the computer area with her telling her about all the specs, tower versus laptop, etc., etc. I notice someone in my peripheral vision, but I ignore it. Our conversation switches over to school starting soon. Our daughters ride the bus together when the lady behind us pokes me in the shoulder and starts barking in French, "I need help too. You need to stop chatting and get helping." Do you know how hard it is to get help in French around here? Big box employees wear blue polo shirts and slacks. I'm wearing a hippie maxi dress and Birkenstocks. I start trying to explain that I don't work here, but I think that's when she picked up on my obvious Anglo accent. She starts talking to me like I'm a misbehaving toddler. "I need you to help me set up my kids' homework. I don't have time for you to chat about your kids. Have fun finding a job once your manager hears you're chatting about your kids instead of working." At this point, my neighbor pushes me out of the way. She's about twice as big as the Karen yelling at me. She walks up to the Karen and just shouts at her for 2 minutes. I couldn't catch most of it because I only know school French, but I'm picking out a lot of F-bombs. One of the staff comes up and tries to ask what's going on, but they aren't paying him any attention. When he realizes they're not English, he walks away. I guess he didn't think he could help. Karen storms off in a huff. I wish I know what was said. Also, my neighbor is awesome. Edit to add, my neighbor told me what she said, but she paraphrased it for me because my French isn't stellar. "Who do you think you are bugging my friend? What about her says she works here? You're being very rude to my friend who is being very nice. If you had asked nicely, I'm sure she would have helped you." And our last story. Tourists think my parking space is public. Tow truck, cops, and court say otherwise. I used to live in an apartment down in San Diego by where the jet boat races used to be in Mission Bay. I worked as a consultant and flew home to San Diego on a red-eye, landing Saturday morning just in time for jet boat festivities. I was well aware that once I was home, the weekend would be chaotic from all the fans at the jet boat races, and parking in that part of the city is ridiculous even without the races. They're really fun, by the way. Anyways, I pull into my alley and I'm getting to my assigned space, and there in my assigned unit space is a family spilling out of an overloaded minivan Boogie boards, a few red wagons, coolers, beach chairs, and toys, floaties, and several kids. I pull up the car and get out. I thought of honking, but didn't want to be rude, and walk over to who I assume is Dad and kindly informed him he was parked in my space and he needed to find another spot. He immediately, at the top of his lungs, shouts in my face, "I was here first. This is my parking space, not yours." Now Mrs. Bowling Ball comes over and huffs that they've been looking for almost an hour for parking and that I couldn't just come in and demand the space from them. I told them it's assigned parking, but they didn't believe me. This is understandable because the poor overloaded van was parked over a bright red notice painted on the actual pavement that the space is for unit number 19 only. I told the lovely couple that they were mistaken and that could they please move so I could go upstairs, shower, and fall into bed because red eyes suck. I informed them again and again that they were not from here and were making a huge mistake. The van had Arizona plates. This comes in play later. Well, folks, it didn't end well. The bowling ball army picked up their beach invasion equipment and headed for the beach with me telling them that they're going to get towed. The last memory of that day was Major Dad flipping me the bird over his shoulder as he and the bowling ball wife and all his crappy kids disappeared down the alley. Okay, so obviously they were towed, and my girlfriend at the time were up and awake on the deck, which is 2 stories basically above said parking space, so we can see my car parked in its space. All happy and where it's supposed to be, just like me. Now we have to take a side tangent here about my car at the time. I had 2 cars at the time, and the one parked in Space Exhibit A was an old Saturn that I bought for around $1,000 maybe. I bought it specifically to take to the airport almost every week for work, and another purpose was to use as a block-off for my garage. See, the parking space in Exhibit A was right outside of the garage where my nicer, shinier car that I actually gave a crap about was parked inside, safe from the tourists. If I don't park something in that space in the alley, someone like Major Dad would block me in. Anyways, that placeholder and airport parking whore of a car was an absolute POS. I didn't even change the oil. I spent $0 on that car because it was parked at Lindbergh Airport all week and the gulls just crapped all over it while it was lightly doused in jet exhaust all week. Okay, back to the story. We knew the bowling family would be back soon, and knowing this wasn't my first tangle with Arizona tourists, I wanted to be sure that my car wouldn't get messed with out of anger and possibly be vandalized. Well, they came waddling up around 7 p.m. Dad was drunk and heavily sunburned. Mrs. Bowling Ball also had an angry pink hue to her, although less drunk. The kids were there, which is a good thing, as you'll read soon. Maybe drunk Dad was going to DUI his way back to the beach to get the kids, or maybe they weren't in tow because he knew he was going to DUI. Don't know. We'll never know. Anyways, Dad realizes the van's no longer there and is off somewhere taking a much-deserved break from hauling sweaty, heavy butts through the Mojave Desert. Michelle, my girlfriend, is filming him on her new smartphone as I yell down and say, "I told you I'd tow you." The Major looks up at us, flips us the bird, and then proceeds to kick the door of the poor Saturn over and over again and again. Okay, so this part goes really quickly since it's Pacific Beach area and there are a ton of police in the area, and it wasn't long before police arrive and book him and his wife on assault. They said many threats, and he got charged with criminal damage and criminal trespass. The happy ending? The best part was my girlfriend at the time was going to USD for law, and she helped me make it so that B-turd had to drive all the way to San Diego from Phoenix probably 10 times for court. The Saturn got a new paint job from the court win and was suddenly too nice to leave at the airport, so I changed the oil and sold it for $2,000 and got another space holder / airport whore of a car. I like it that you got the car towed immediately. Too many people post stories in which they try to be nice, get a pile of crap, and don't know how to handle said crap. Towing's the way. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.